Nostalgia is one heck of a drug. Everyone experiences nostalgia for something, whether it's a favorite snack, movie, era, but for me, it's video games. Let's take a trip down memory lane for a moment and listen to a song that many of you have most likely heard at least once in your life. The song that you're listening to right now is My Son Venus from the Minecraft soundtrack. I've heard this song so many times throughout my childhood. I played Minecraft every day growing up. However, whenever I listen to this song, I feel a little bit melancholic. I start remembering all those times, all those memories, staying up late, playing with my friends, and just knowing I'll never get those moments back. If you're still here watching this video, that means my plan worked. I didn't only make that intro to talk about my experience with nostalgia. Oh no. I also made it to show how we can be swayed by nostalgia. So I say all this to bring to light an issue I have seen become more and more prevalent. Your nostalgia is being exploited for your money. I mean, gamers just love nostalgia. Here's a video of me and my friends revisiting the Wii just for old time's sake. And yes, we were playing Family Feud, don't judge. We are constantly being bombarded with remakes, remasters, games with similar art styles to games that came out like 20 years ago. We revisit the same games over and over again because, speaking from experience, I just miss playing video games as a kid. But before I dive any deeper into this rabbit hole, I want to talk about nostalgia itself first. Nostalgia is really such a strange emotion. It makes us feel bittersweet, craving a time that has long passed. Although I feel like the problem with nostalgia is that the fact that it is deceitful. We often look at the past with rose-tinted glasses. Things that were bad appear like great times in a few years, because we are so constantly overwhelmed by the present day. This in turn kind of causes us to ignore the present day entirely in present issues. A fun little thing I learned is that the word nostalgia peaked in usage in 2020. Due to the global lockdowns, all of us were looking to the past to find some sort of comfort. A lot of people sat at home to watch Netflix or YouTube. Many picked up a hobby of some sorts, and many started playing video games again. Shoot, sometimes I feel nostalgic about those times, even though they were absolutely terrible. But you may be asking, how does this exactly relate to video games? Well, that is an absolutely great question. Just like real life, we often have an era of gaming that we miss and we want to go back to. It kind of becomes this thing that we are obsessed with. I myself missed that 2010 to 2014 era of gaming with the Wii, Xbox 360, PS3. But I would be lying if I said every game from this era was a banger. However, if you go on YouTube, you may notice something a little bit different. Just search any gaming video essay, and you'll likely find someone talking about how gaming has changed for the worse. Which, although it's true in some aspects, it does not paint the entire picture. As a result though, the sentiment that modern gaming sucks now has caused a big interest in retro gaming and going back to relive your childhood, which is amazing in a lot of aspects. I mean, just look at this PS2 collection that I have. I wasn't even alive when this console came out, but let me have some fun here, man. However, due to the explosion of retro gaming, video game companies have devised some devious plans and have started shifting their business practices to manipulate your feelings for profit. One of the biggest trends in gaming used to get nostalgic gamers to spend more money are remakes and remasters. This has also become one of the most confusing topics in gaming, so before going any further, I want to clarify the difference between these two terms. A remake is basically when you make the same game from years ago from the ground up. These are amazing because they allow companies to modernize previous titles whose controls, graphics, gameplay mechanics just have not stood the test of time. A remaster is basically taking a game and improving on a previous version, such as uncapping the frame rate, new textures, and sometimes some quality of life improvements. Never too many though. But if you play either of the two versions, you are largely playing the exact same game. Remakes and remasters are normally sold to provide the perfect way to play an older game, or improve upon things from previous versions. But this only happens about half of the time. I mean, just look at all of these terrible and absolutely garbage remakes and remasters that have come out in the past few years. Remasters in specific are often used as a lazy way by corporations to sell you the exact same game a few years later. Looking at you, Bethesda. An example that happened extremely recently is with the Last of Us franchise, which was only 2 games. Let me just give you a timeline of Last of Us releases. In 2013, we got The Last of Us on PS3. Great game, critically acclaimed. You know what The Last of Us is. But in 2014, we got Last of Us Remastered on PS4. You know, that's a little strange. It came out last year, but okay. A long gap later, and we get Last of Us Part 2 in 2020. Controversial to say the least, but at least it was a new entry. But this is when it gets crazy. We get another Last of Us game, Last of Us 1 remake. See how this is just downright confusing? And then they went and released Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. And then they just recently released a Last of Us collection, which includes Last of Us Part 1 remake, and Part 2 Remaster. This just seems like a downright scam at this point. See, this is one of my main problems with remakes and remasters. For the average consumer, they most likely have no idea what the difference between these two are, which makes people feel either confused or they just see this new shiny thing. And they're like, oh, I gotta have the new shiny thing. And then they buy it, and it's sometimes rarely different from the original. Or actually, they cut content from the original, such as Resident Evil 3 Remake. Most of the time, these are just full-on cash grabs. Not to mention the fact that these remakes and remasters are coming out at such a high quantity, and looking at sales numbers, I mean, I can see why these companies just keep on releasing these games. Everything practically has a remaster or a remake at this point. Freaking Gex and Glover have remasters, and I don't even think people like those games. Here's what happens when you just scroll on Steam and you look up remasters. It just keeps on going, man. However, there is a specific company that practically sells nostalgia, and they have become an extremely controversial figure in the gaming community. You know them, you might hate them. I'm talking about Nintendo. It kind of feels like a hot take to say this now, but I have always been a Nintendo fan. I've loved the fact that Nintendo has always been an innovator in the industry, pushing the boundaries for all these wacky and crazy ideas that shouldn't work, but they somehow managed to make it work. But if there's one company that has become the boogeyman of gaming, it's Nintendo. Nintendo definitely caters to that crowd that is super nostalgic for their franchise that have been around for practically forever. With the release of the Switch 2, Nintendo has reared its head as this greedy, money-hungry company that can do whatever it wants because it's Nintendo. They know you will play the latest Nintendo games, and they know their super fans will buy every single stupidly expensive accessory to play them. People have had an outrage over the prices of everything Switch 2 related. But the Switch 2 also became the fastest selling console of all time. So there's a large disconnect from the vocal minority and the large majority. Considering the fact that Nintendo sells nostalgia, everyone who misses those childhood years of playing Nintendo games will most likely cave into buying one eventually. Nintendo is like the Apple of gaming now. They make enough improvements to get you to buy the console, and they know you probably will buy it anyway. So, what exactly is my point? Well, this all comes back to the point in the title of this video, that nostalgia is the most abused drug in the gaming industry. Companies know this, and they will exploit it as it just makes them money. However, I'm going to pivot the discussion a little bit and talk about how our nostalgia affects the gaming industry as a whole. In my previous points, I have stated the many methods of which companies have exploited our nostalgia to buy their games or buy entire consoles. But I haven't talked about the gaming community as a collective and how we personally affect the industry. I want to call back to a previous point I made. When you look on YouTube at nostalgic video game essays, they largely have a negative connotation to the industry currently. They paint this picture that the video game industry was this magical wonderland and was so much better 10 years ago, 20 years ago in comparison to today. And that there were so many good games coming out all the time, which simply was not true. There were some absolute terrible games coming out in the golden era of gaming too, you know. Let me just give some examples. Bubsy 3D came out the same year as Super Mario 64. Sonic 06 came out the same year as Twilight Princess and Oblivion. Superman 64 came out the same year as Super Smash Bros. Does anybody remember these times as, oh, that was the year Bubsy 3D came out? Heck no, we remember Super Mario 64, man. In the same sense, we aren't going to remember that Gollum came out the same year as Tears of the Kingdom. But it seems we are so negative about these past few years of video games. By doing this, it kind of creates this sentiment that new game's bad, old game's good. Which, although it has some merit, it harms new and potentially amazing ideas that are kind of just thrown aside as a result. Think about how many sequels have been coming out recently. Or think about all the remakes and remasters. No one seems to be willing to be daring or risky anymore. Case in point, I was watching the Nintendo Indie World event. It's actually one of my favorite things Nintendo does, highlighting a lot of really cool ideas and genuine creators who really love the industry. I don't think a lot of people like it most of the time. Most of the time because they want a real Nintendo Direct, or they're looking for one game in specific from the entire show. I feel like this idea has caused a big problem in our industry. We want new ideas, but we cling to our old games. This stigma makes it extremely hard for new faces in the industry to make their games succeed. It really is a dichotomy that unfortunately may not be resolved. It's why Call of Duty and all these stupid sports games always sell well, and indie games most of the time fail. It's comfortable to go back to what you know, just like living in nostalgia. A lot of times we miss out on the present because we always long for that past thing that seems so amazing at the time. But oftentimes I have to remind myself that it wasn't. It was just a normal time, just like right now. I'm not saying being nostalgic is bad. I play a 25-year-old MMO all the time because I just love old school RuneScape. I love revisiting these old games. I love reliving my childhood again. It's good to look back and see what works, what didn't work. But we should be using that to be more creative, not get stuck in this nostalgia bubble. Indie games do it right a lot of times. They take things you love and make new stuff out of it. Look at Hollow Knight, or Stardew Valley, or any other indie game like it. Being stuck in the past means no progress. If a game like Minecraft didn't evolve and add more stuff to be a better game, no new players would join. There would be no incentive to keep playing. And just like Minecraft, the video game industry needs to keep innovating. Without innovation, there will be nothing new for us to be nostalgic about in the future. I want to see new stuff. I want to see new ideas. And maybe just with those new ideas, we can sprinkle in just a little bit of nostalgia.